Let's talk about something that's becoming impossible to ignore. You drive through cantonments, Laboni, Airport Residential Area, and East Legon, and what do you see? Cranes and scaffolding, with billboards screaming luxury living, with gleaming apartment buildings that are rising up from formerly plain lands. And as you can see, a skyline in Accra is changing and it's happening very, very fast. And it makes you wonder, what's really going on? But then the real question we need to be answering today is, who is all this development for? And I don't mean who owns them, but rather who is the target market for this project that are coming up really, really quickly? And are these apartments that are coming up the boom that we're seeing? Is it good for Ghana? And also, we need to be asking ourselves if we're building a city that the average Ghanaian can afford to live in or not. I'm Desmond Kafui, and welcome to another episode of Ghana Ground Up. First things first, let's tackle some facts. Now, the growth we're seeing lately doesn't seem to be an organic growth. It appears to be more of a gold rush. And before you assume that the surge we're seeing lately is sort of some random act, well, I beg to differ and say that there are certain factors that are fueling this apartment boom beyond even what a lot of developers are betting on. Now, we need to look at the fact that there's scarcity of land in the prime areas that are seeing most of the new apartment projects. And there's high demand for land, but then there's less of it. So what ends up being available becomes overly expensive. So it only makes sense for developers to build up to maximize their profits. And in many locations where you can get land with ease, you realize that you normally wouldn't find a lot of apartments there. People would rather buy a house instead of an apartment. But then when you come back to the prime areas where there's little land, and then this little land is selling for millions of Ghana cedis, you would see that it makes sense for you to rather buy an apartment in some much desired location in the city compared to trying to find a big parcel of land that will cost you an arm and a leg. And you see, we need to be very honest with ourselves. Very often, most of us are quick to judge and criticize developers that they are milking the market. But then just put yourself in their shoes. If you took the risk to build a project that cost you several millions, I don't think your mind will be on serving the affordable section of the market. You want your risk to reward you with a good payoff. So we need to come to terms with the fact that the cost of these apartments coming up are really high, but then we also need to appreciate the lamentations of the ordinary Ghanaian that these properties price them out of the market. Moving on, another factor that is helping to fuel the surge in the apartments boom is foreign investment and also demand from the diaspora. Now, many Ghanaians abroad and foreign investors see the real estate landscape in our prime locations as a safe and appreciating asset. And some will buy the apartments to live in them and then later they'll sell them off. Or some will just buy and hold on to them without even living in them. While some investors are buying up properties and channeling some into real estate investment trusts, others are actually wearing the developer's hats and building these apartments themselves. On the side, I see many people know and have heard that real estate is a space to make money over the long period of time, but then not many people understand how the system works for them to make money. So we'll do well to dedicate an episode to cover the different ways that you can make money in real estate. Now, let's face it, there's been a rise in the interest in short-term rentals or Airbnb in Ghana, and based on data we have from Airbnb, Ghana has become a hotspot for short-term rentals in prime locations, and this is generating good returns for property owners to the point where these apartments are now heavily competing with hotels. So you have more people booking apartments and staying for longer than they would have if they had booked a hotel. And as a result, developers are pushing to meet this demand for apartments by building more of them. Now, one thing that we need to appreciate is that Ghana's middle class is growing and it's expanding. And with this, a lot of people are changing and refining their taste and preferences. Now, the growing middle class wants convenience and not just a place to lay their head. So they're opting for projects or properties that go beyond the standard houses we all grew up to appreciate. And now they want to live in gated complexes with gyms, swimming pools, and of course, less stress. And the apartments that are coming up have become the preferred choices for a lot of the middle class. But then the question actually remains if most of the middle class are able to afford these projects or if they're selling for other projects that sort of mimic what these high-end apartments are offering. Another factor is that those with decent amounts of cash in the bank are afraid of what may happen to the Ghana cedi, sort of like the fear of devaluation against the dollar and other potent foreign currencies. And because we're having to deal with a high level of inflation and a weak cedi, those with the monies prefer to save their money in real estate rather than keeping them at the bank. In short, when you have factors like limited land, rising demand, investor interest, and also lifestyle shifts all happening simultaneously, the market responds by supplying more apartments. But then there's an irony. Though many people are buying these apartments, there's still a decent number of units that haven't been sold yet. And then there are more projects that are coming up. So we are likely to see more apartments, but then we're also likely to see more empty units. And it's not a prophecy of doom or anything like that, but then it's just an indicator of where the market is. And it just shows us that we have a lot of room to grow as an industry. Let's be fair. The boom in apartments has brought us some good, and we can't ignore that. Now, drive around and then you'll appreciate the evolution the city is experiencing. Now, the skyline is looking really, really beautiful, and it all feels like we're truly developing. And the architecture we're seeing around lately is no longer boring. And we need to understand that the increase in the number of projects directly translates to more jobs for masons, carpenters, electricians, architects, suppliers, and other professionals. And the good news is that this will spill over to other service providers in areas like property management, rentals, furnishing, and real estate agencies. And this is a big deal because one project that is going up ends up touching different sectors of the economy. More apartments means more people can live on less land when we build upward, especially with more people settling in Accra. But then the imbalance of the costs and also affordability still haunts many who want to make their homes in the city. Another upside to all the apartments in Accra is modern living. Now, for those who can afford it, apartments offer modern housing, security, backup utilities, and all the conveniences of location. In the end, all these modern apartments position Accra as a global city, which will be attractive to businesses, tourism, and also residents from around the world. So if we do it right, apartments can help to modernize the housing system in Accra. But then there are some downsides to this boom. And then here are certain things that we need to be minded of. And here's where things get a little complicated. Now, there's an affordability crisis where most of these apartments are priced in dollars, and these are not cheap anyway. And you see that the average Ghanaian cannot or even may not be able to afford to buy or even rent these properties. Now, consider this. A one-bedroom apartment in any of the prime areas I mentioned will rent for about $1,200 to $1,500 a month, and that is about 18,000 cedis to 23,000 cedis a month. Now, the cost of renting this one-bedroom apartment for a month can pay for a one-bedroom apartment in a regular part of town for a year or even 2 years. The ordinary Ghanaian just can't afford these new apartments. So even though there are more projects that are coming up, more projects being built, our housing deficit is hardly improving. And over the past 3 years, property prices have gone up between 10 to 20%, but then not much increase in incomes. And even for the households or for those who have had some increment in the salaries, the inflation is eating up the value they would have enjoyed. From the outside, it may not be visible, but then when you enter a number of apartments, you'd realize that a good number of them are empty. And not too empty to be ghost towers, but then some may be on the verge of becoming ghost towers. Now, sometimes this happens because people are buying properties not to live in them, but then just to hold on to them based on speculation. And sometimes it's also a case where people are just not buying, so developers are having a hard time selling out their units. Now, an easy way to spot this effect is to see the number of lights that are turned on at night in apartment blocks when you just walk past them. So the next time you walk past a very beautiful, a very stunning apartment at night, do well to look up and see how many units are lit and how many units are not lit. Now, this by no means implies directly that the ones that are dark are unoccupied and unsold, but then in the end, generally, it gives you an idea over time of which units are sold and which units are not sold. And it also paints a picture of what the real issue or the real state of the market and occupancy rates in these apartments are. At the heart of all developments, good infrastructure is a rope that ties everything together nicely. But then more buildings mean more people. And what's the pull on electricity supply? And are roads able to handle the traffic without gridlocks? Are the water lines able to serve every area adequately? And also the waste systems, are they able to keep up? Ghana is known globally for our history and rich cultures, and as developers are buying and breaking down old properties with stories within their walls to build luxury properties, some of the stories and some of the history and culture and also the color of Accra's neighborhoods may fade away. In short, it's not just about building apartments, it's also about transforming the city. But then the question is, who benefits the most? If the space continues unchecked, Ghana could face two futures. Now, future A is where Accra becomes a world-class city with diversified housing, modern infrastructure, and also opportunities for everyone. Now, future B is where Accra is split into two. One where the luxury enclave is for the wealthy, and then the other side will be where the overcrowded and underdeveloped communities will be for everyone else. Now, it may seem like it's too soon to say we're in a crossroad, but then if too many units remain empty for a long time, or if property prices rise too far beyond what incomes can accommodate, we risk a housing bubble. And if foreign buyers and investors control too much of the market, local ownership will end up shrinking. And I don't think this is what we want. So then, what needs to change? Now, to make this apartment boom work for and in Ghana, here's what I think we need to consider. We need to consider inclusive urban planning. Now, with this, we need to have mandatory quotas allocated for affordable housing projects to create a good blend of low, middle, and high income brackets. Now, we also need to improve the infrastructure we have at the moment. And you can see that drainage is one of the major issues in Greater Accra, and the onset of the raining season normally ends up exposing the deficiencies in the drainage network in the city. And we also need to look at the traffic conditions we are experiencing. If we have more people trooping to the city, definitely we're going to have more cars coming through. We're going to have more human traffic as well. So we need to find adequate ways of managing both human traffic and also vehicular traffic. Some of the roads we have may need some rework, and also we may need some additional access roads to just take away some of the traffic from the central routes that we all normally ply. And also when it comes to water and power supply, well, we need to understand that the growing population will have more pull on these resources, and we must be well equipped to be able to serve the growing demands. Lastly, there should be some incentive for affordable housing. Now, developers should be able to enjoy some rewards for building for the middle and lower income markets so that they don't have to take up all the huge hits on their profits. And I'm saying this because for a lot of developers, the cost of construction and the market generally pushes them toward the high-end market so that they can make good returns. So if there are some incentives from the government and maybe some tax rebates and all that to enable them to comfortably build for the lower and then the middle income class, I believe that all these issues that we are facing with the housing deficit will become a thing of the past. And the issue of affordable housing will just not be something that we give lip service to, but then will be an issue that is tackled head on. Let's face it, Accra is growing, and that's not even up for debate. The real question is, who gets to call Accra home? Accra needs to work for the many and not just the wealthy few, because a skyline full of luxury high-rises means nothing if the lights inside are off. So what's happening around you? What have you observed around the city? I'd like you to drop a comment, and then let's discuss what you may have seen compared to what we have also shared on the episode today. So let's keep the engagement going, and do well to share, do well to like, do well to subscribe to the channel as well, and invite others who haven't had a taste of what we share on the channel to get on board. That may mean you sharing the link or something like that, but then whichever way, if you find a good thing, do well to get your friends on board as well. I'm Desmond Kafui, and this is Ghana Ground Up. I'll catch you in the next episode.